What's up guys, NepentheZ here and welcome back to another episode of The Road to Glory. Lots to talk about today as per usual. First of all, thank you for being here. If you could drop a thumbs up, it would be very, very much appreciated. Lots of good discussion topics from last video. Very excited to get into this. But as you guys know, I made the excuse last episode because, you know, it feels just cheap and dirty using it as a reason why I lost. But my controller is broken. You'll see that more and more through this video, specifically right at the end where I show you how it's just absolutely screwed. But just generally speaking, I wasn't playing my best FIFA. I finished up to game 19 in today's video, and I just generally didn't perform good enough. You know, everyone has their off weeks. I hate having off weeks, man. Like I'm not good enough to have an off week. An off week for me is me really scraping the barrel to get Elite 3 weekly. And that's just, the amount I play this game, the knowledge I have of this game, my understanding of this game, you should suggest that in spite of that, I don't have off weeks. You know what I mean? But it's again, I feel like it's the pressure, man. Last week and the weekend before, I knew I wasn't going to play all my games. I finished 21 and 4 and 18 and 3. And those are two fantastic results for me. You know, that would have easily seen me into Elite 3 territory, potentially up towards Elite 1 territory. This week, I started looking at, okay, I'm 29 wins away from Elite 3 monthly. We've got the extra day. I'm going to play all 40 games. And the pressure comes in and my performance drops. It's so bad. And there's actually there was actually a comment. Let me start with this comment. It's from Mike Archibald, and he says, the problem with FIFA is people can't take getting beat since it became competitive. The standard of players has risen, making a lot of matches you play hard, which automatically stresses people out and makes you angry. I'm no different to anyone else, and this happens to me as well, but I'm well aware that this is the issue. People need to own up, relax, and stop bitching, blaming the game and everything else but themselves week on week. And I take what you say, quite seriously. You are very right. People can never accept the fact that they're the reason they lost, or very few people can, and you don't learn from those errors. But what we have with FIFA, and I've said this so many times, and I'll try and be brief on this, is that the way the FUT Champs section is set up is that it is so just savage for every loss. You know, every time you lose one game, it could potentially ruin your entire weekend league. And there's no other esport that does that. And I use the term esport very loosely here, but there's no other esport that does that because there's an elo system. If I knew, let's say I'm an Elite 3 player in a weekly rank ladder system, and I'm just chilling there on Elite 3, I know every game I'm going to come up against, every player I'm going to come up against is going to be on the same elo level as me. I'm going to be playing Elite 3 level players constantly, which means my win rate will be somewhere around the 500% mark. You know, I'll win on average every other game. If I learn some things and get better at the game, my win rate will go up, as will my elo, as will the level of opponents I face. And if I'm not as good as the game as I thought, my win rate will go down, my elo will go down, the level of opponent I will play against will go down, and I'll be rewarded accordingly. But a loss won't be devastating, because if you lose, all you do is you lose some elo points. You won't get demoted to Gold 1 by losing one game. You would have to go on quite a heavy loss streak before you lost enough elo points to get completely demoted down a level, which means if you had a bad patch, if you had a bad day or a bad couple of days and you lost 2 or 3 games, no problem. Let me reset, rebuild my team, maybe go and play some non-competitive play to sharpen my skill set, go back in and get back on that winning streak. And it wouldn't matter all that much because a loss wouldn't be the be-all and end-all of your week, your weekend, your rewards. But in FIFA, if you lose a couple of games, you've ruled yourself out of a position to win that week. You know, if you normally finish on 29 wins, and so 29-11 is literally your go-to, and then you have a weekend league where you get a couple of disconnects added in there, all of a sudden now you're going to get Gold 1 instead of Elite 3 because this game is so unforgiving with losses. And that's what I think makes people the most angry. If I knew that every opponent I was going to come up against was give or take on my skill level, I would feel far less aggrieved for losing games. Because I'll be like, hey, I lost to this guy, but I know he's as good as me because his elo points say so. You know, he hasn't manipulated the match engine, he hasn't manipulated matchmaking, he hasn't blocked people to get here. He's just good. And so when I lose or when I do things wrong or when I make mistakes or when my opponent does things to get himself back into the game, I know he's doing this because he's good. But in FIFA right now, you don't know what the level of opponent you lose against is because it doesn't let you know. I know for a fact I lost to someone this weekend league that usually finishes Silver 1 or Silver 2 because they're a viewer and they told me so. And that just shouldn't ever happen. You know, I'm not saying it shouldn't ever happen, but it goes into keeping of like, when I lost that game, I sit there and think, did I lose that game because of some RNG? Did I lose that game because of me? Did I lose that game because my opponent was just really good? Or was it my unforced errors and my mistakes that were the error? And you don't know, and that's really hard to just fathom. It's just really hard to fathom. It's really hard to sit there and say to yourself, I don't know why I lost this game. And EA don't tell you why you lost this game. You just have to guess. And that, for me, is what makes the biggest problem in why I get frustrated at this game. Because I don't get frustrated generally when I lose in games. I get a little bit frustrated at the time because I made a mistake. I usually get a lot frustrated at me. Like in PUBG, when I play PUBG, if I misplay, I get really angry. But then in reflection, I'm like, hey, I wasn't positioned very well. I shot when I didn't need to. I was too aggressive or I was too passive, and I can just understand and appreciate immediately that it was my fault. In FIFA, you just don't you just don't know. You just don't know. Anyway, next comment is from Crafty. Says, hey Nep, do you think the switch this FIFA to more competitive gameplay has led to more boring gameplay in teams? For example, back when Foot Champs wasn't a thing, people would build teams from all leagues and nationalities like Turkish, Russian league, or all Dutch and Belgian team. Now it's all about meta players and prime icons. People's coins goes towards the meta rather than the fun. All the best. May good health to your Ben. Maybe it means baby. I appreciate it anyway. Yeah, I understand completely what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. The drive for competitiveness and for those rewards has just geared everyone towards only wanting the absolute best out of everything. You know, they want to squeeze that extra 0.5% out. And as you say, what happens is when you see the guys that are the best in the world using these players, you automatically think, right, I need these players. Because you don't see the guys that are the best in the world using randos, or one of the guys I open rewards for does use Quincy Promes in his team. One of the other guys uses Alessandrini in his team. So there are instances where non-meta superstars are used, but it's not often. And I think, as you say, it's led to just boring teams and boring gameplay because all everyone's doing is trying to manipulate the game to the best of their advantage so that they can get the best results, so that they can get the best rewards. And that makes absolutely sense in terms of competitive gameplay. You see that in all the other games. In League of Legends, people use the champions that offer the best resources. People, they farm the most efficient way to generate gold. They do everything that benefits them as a player and them as a team. And in FIFA, people are no different. But in a game like League of Legends, they also have game modes that promote non-meta play. They have something called ARAM, all random, all middle. You go into a game and you just get assigned a champion. You don't get to pick it. Your team composition isn't necessarily good, and you all just fight down one lane instead of down 3 lanes with a jungle. And it's just a lot more fun. It adds a fun aspect outside of that competitive nature. But on top of that is, there are things that work in League of Legends in online play that you can try. There are unique champions that have specific skill sets that still work, and there's no real down period. Every champion has its positives and its negatives, but in FIFA, you can't use someone like Olivier Giroud. You can't use a Zlatan Ibrahimovic if you want to get the best out of your team, because they just don't suit the way the game has to be played for you to beat your opponent. And that's sad. And as you say, what it does is it drives people towards these same teams and this same gameplay, and it makes the game a lot more monotonous and boring. And that's why what I said yesterday about either new tournament modes or having contracts in the game that require you to actually explore the game more, I think that would be fun. And although I know some people don't enjoy the gameplay specifically because there are some issues within the gameplay, I think generally speaking it would be fun. And what prime example here, actually, I went and bought that Ciro Immobile for about 220,000 coins. I saw the look of him, and I loved the look of him. I was like, damn, this card looks sick. Let me go and buy him. Let me go and try him out. What I had to do, though, is put him on the bench to bring him on as a sub, because for me to fit him into my team, I would have to change to a team that is not as effective as the team that I currently have, and I wasn't willing to do that. So to try a brand new player, I had to basically use him as a sub, which kind of sucks a little bit. Saying that, he ends up scoring a goal for us. You'll see another header. AA says, Nep, do you think it's better to purchase an icon defender or an icon attacker of the same level? In my personal experience, dude, attack is probably the least necessary position to upgrade. You know, like, I genuinely believe if you had an attack of, say, Anthony Martial, Gabriel Jesus, and any Premier League right wing, Sterling, Walcott, Willian, whoever you want, I believe you would get a very, very similar output from those players compared to a Thierry Henry, an R9 Ronaldo, and a Prime Ronaldinho. I'm not saying that you'd get as much out of them. I definitely think the Prime icons and the better players will pay dividends in those tough matches. But I definitely think the attack is one of the least relevant positions because it's so easy to generate chances and it's so easy to score goals. What I would say is that I think definitely defenders and midfielders are the most important positions to have the best players in your team because that is the most AI controlled area. And it's so important. You know, one thing that I learned from watching the pros, one thing that I learned from talking to Skills a lot and watching him, is one of the reasons why he does so well is because his AI defense is so sick. You know, his defense is so good. The fullbacks that these players use, Alexandro and let's say, you know, the most overused fullback is Valencia. They're just bags of pace, good abilities, and fullbacks. The two central defenders, you regularly see central defenders with really high defensive stats, mostly 99s across the board, really strong physical and aggression. And in fact, if we go to, if we look at probably some of the most overused defenders, Desai, I think, is a fair assessment for one of the most used centre backs. Really high reactions, really high strength and aggression, and perfect defending abilities when put a shadow. He gets 93 pace, 93 sprint speed, 97 acceleration, 99 across the board in defending, really high reactions, really high composure, and then really high strength and aggression. When we look at other centre-backs that are used, Maldini is definitely one of the centre-backs that is commonly used from pro players in this game. Once applied a shadow on him, 99 defending across the board, 92 sprint speed, 97 acceleration, 95 reactions, 83 strength, not so much aggression, but what's really common with the overpowered centre-backs, and let's go and look at Rio Ferdinand as well, another one that we see quite often, the prime icon Ferdinand. 92 sprint speed, 99 acceleration, 99 across the board in defending, really high strength and aggression at 88 and 86, and then 86 reactions. What we see from the best players in this game in regards of their defence is we see perfect defending ability, exceptional pace, and very high reactions. So they seem to be the three most key abilities for defenders. And then I think strength and aggression comes into play as well. So when you look at upgrading your defence, it's because you don't control those players, because the AI controls those players. When you are in control of a defender, it doesn't matter realistically what their stats are because you're the one manoeuvring them. Sure, pace can be quite important, but the tackling and the interceptions and the marking, it's irrelevant because you're the person that's controlling that one. But those three that you're not controlling, they need to be as high valued as possible, as high rated as possible to do the things that you would want them to do that you can't do because you're not controlling them. So taking yourself those Rio Ferdinands and to a degree Jerome Boateng as well, you know, someone that I absolutely love in this game, the 88 Jerome Boateng. He's 88 rated first of all, so he's high level. 88 sprint speed, 87 acceleration, 91 strength, 82 aggression, 99 is generally across the board, a little low in interceptions, but he actually only has 82 reactions. So maybe he's not the greatest centre-back in the world to have because his reactions when you're not controlling them aren't good enough. So if somebody takes a shot and it rebounds, he doesn't react quick enough. If somebody puts a pass through your defence and he's a few yards out of the way, he doesn't react quick enough. And I think that's why attack is so less relevant in improving first, because the AI attack is generally speaking not that important because it's so much easier to manipulate even with less stats. But your defenders and your midfielders, you know, when you look at some of the most overused midfielders in this game, Patrick Vieira is of course one of them. I'd say Vieira and Hullet are the two. And let's use 88 Vieira because I think he's probably the one that the pros use the most. when you whack a shadow on him, again, you know, 99 interceptions, 99 stand tackle, 90 aggression, 89 strength, 94 sprint speed with 99 acceleration, and 87 reactions. Again, really high reactions. You know, when we look at reactions, I think 86, 87 and above I would deem as really high. 80 to 85 I deem as very good, and anything less than 80 I would deem as probably a little bit too low. But what you see out of these meta CDMs, and let's look at Hullet, although some players use Hullet as an attacking player, some use him as a defensive player, but once again, with a shadow on him, high 90s across the board, good strength and aggression, 88 reactions, perfect pace. You know, what he offers is that in a defensive sense. So I think the reason why, in my opinion, that you can see my controller here bugged, by the way. I can't do anything. It got progressively worse throughout these games to the point where I just couldn't do anything. But what you see from the midfielders and defenders that are so overused is that they have stats that are relevant to the game when the player that's playing isn't in control of them. And I think that's super important to recognise, because it's something that needs to be discussed, you know, because you can only control one player at a time on the field. So when you're in control of the player, the stats are generally considerably less relevant than when you're not in control of the player. But when you're not in control of the player, like look at this guy now, he's controlling his right back, he's got 3 defenders. If they all had really low defensive stats and really low reactions and really low interceptions and such, my attacking players would overpower them, they'd get into better positions, and it'd be easier for me to score because he's not controlling them. But if he switches to one of those centre-backs, it doesn't matter what stats they have, because he can position them into a more pertinent area to do better with. So that would be my opinion right there. I'd say you're better off buying icon defenders and midfielders than attackers, and definitely upgrade attack, in my personal opinion, last. Saying that, my attack and midfield is definitely better than my defence. I know I need to upgrade my defence. I'm really considering a complete and utter change on my team over the next few weeks. I don't want to get rid of Modric and De Bruyne because I absolutely love them, but I would love to see how I personally would fare in a weekend league if I went and bought Marcel Desailly, you know, Paolo Maldini and David De Gea in goal, went and got Alexandro and well, I could use like Versalco at right back still, and then had a less attack and a less midfield but much better defence. I wonder how much better I would do, because my AI then would be defending more for me instead of less for me, if that makes sense. But you can see here, guys, this isn't me like flicking it left and right. I just can't do anything. It's just constantly thinks that I'm holding left on the analog stick, and it was really frustrating. I got a new controller for this last game. I had so many more comments and I'm just not going to be able to get through them. I had a new controller for this last game. I came up against a good team, and I was thinking to myself, like, oh, this is just going to be one of those weekend leagues. It's just not going to work out for me. But this last game, I once again, like I said on Twitter, it felt like a different game. And some people made a very valid observation and said, you know, sometimes you play better players and sometimes you play worse players. You know, maybe on this occasion, it wasn't the new controller that caused me to win comfortably. It was the fact that I was playing against a considerably lower tier opponent, and potentially in previous results it wasn't the fact that my controller was faulty as to why I lost. Maybe I was just playing really good opponents, and that's definitely something to take into consideration. That's definitely a reasonable look at what's going on. What a goal that was, by the way, from Rui Costa. But when we talk about the feel of the game, you know, all this weekend league, I've felt like my passing has just been the worst it's been for me in a long time. I felt like my shots were just missing, like simple shots, open goal chances. You saw I actually discarded Kluivert because of the fact he missed so many sitters, but I wonder if it was just because my controller kept dragging the ball. You know, I missed an open goal with him, I missed a one-on-one with him, the keeper passed it to him in the edge of the box, and he shot this way on his weak foot when I did a low driven to the, like when he missed that, if you go back and watch that, he shot to the left post with his weak foot, but I did a low driven to the right post with his strong foot, expecting just to rifle it home, and it dragged it with his weak foot wide. And I wonder, is that because my controller was clawing left? And so, in spite of what I think I'm trying to do, my controller's telling the game something different, and he missed. So I got really angry. I probably hastily discarded him, but I discarded Kluivert and I discarded Blanc because I was so frustrated with them. But the difference when I changed controller just felt night and day. You know, it felt like my shots were going where I was aiming them again. It felt like my passes were going where I was aiming them again. And it just felt like a completely different game. This, though, guys, is going to be the end of the video. If you did enjoy this, be sure to leave a like, rating, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. But for now, guys, I'm out. Peace.